Welcome back, everybody. Recently granted paroles have sparked a debate among South Africans. This comes after an announcement by Correctional Services that Paralympian Oscar Pistorius will soon be a free man after 10 months into his 5-year sentence. Not so long ago, the High Court overturned the ruling to deny the parole of convicted murderer Clive Derby-Lewis. Xolile Mngeni, one of Anni Dewani's killers, wasn't so lucky as he died from a brain tumor while serving his sentence. And we've also got a case now with Shabir Sheikh, whose parole has, his conditions have been loosened now so that he can actually go into business. Well, joining us now to talk a little bit about this is the chairperson for the Commission of Gender Equality, Mfanozelwe Shozi, but he is also the former chairperson of the Parole Board, so it makes it much easier to have this conversation with you as well. Thank you very much for joining us and welcome to Morning Live.
Morning, Glenn, and morning to your viewers.
All right, so let's take a look at the different kinds of paroles that we actually get in terms of a South African context. A lot of people looking at, let's just take the Oscar Pistorius situation now. 1/6 of his sentence has been served, and he's already basically up for parole. That's in August this year. So talk to us about this.
Leon, the sentencing, that's the court jurisdiction. Correctional Services has to actually implement what the court has actually given them. The problem here was with the sentencing of the offender. And therefore, after 1/6 of the sentence, the Correctional Service should actually consider whether the offender is eligible for parole. In this instance, I think that the Parole Board saw fit that the offender is eligible for parole, which is critical because one should ask a number of questions why, as much as we respect the judiciary, why the judge opted for 2761I in the first instance, because that's what the Correctional Services is actually following in this particular instance.
Yeah.
But we're also, Leon, the other critical matter as well is the Parole Board has a discretion whether to release in August or release in September. As the General Commission, we were really alarmed to release somebody in August during the Women's Month. And as much as this is a culpable homicide, but violence against women in the country is still very rife.
Yeah.
And therefore, at least we can opt for September, October, and so forth.
Well, I mean, we look at that, and you've got the public crying foul. And as much as the public cries foul, this is the justice system, and he is eligible for parole. He can come out. That was what his sentencing was all about. So we talk about gender commission, we talk about women's rights, but this case almost surpasses that, doesn't it? Because this is now falling under South African law and not necessarily how the public should feel.
Definitely, it's justice, and the Correctional Service is actually acting on the sentencing, as I've said, and therefore the public will always have the views about some of these issues. From the beginning, Leon, this case, we even had a television station set to actually assist the public in terms of this particular case. So from the beginning, this case has been having a lot of public coverage, and the public, even during the sentencing, when the judge handed down the sentence, the public actually cried about the length of sentence was also given, and also the type of sentences and culpable homicide as opposed to murder. This was also another issue that the public raised.
Yeah, which we're going to see now, the appeal coming in, and I mean, his days are not over in court, and that's something we
the
do
matter
know.
is still sub judice because
Absolutely.
it has been referred to the Supreme Court of Appeal.
But let's look at another issue. I mean, you look at a case like Oscar Pistorius. Oscar Pistorius he's been arrested. He was granted bail. He has stood trial. He has now served time. And all of this within a matter of 2.5 years, and we could see him walking out of prison now. And yet, you use the word public coverage, and yet there are still so many awaiting trial prisoners sitting in the jails waiting for their day in court. Whether they are guilty or innocent, they won't know until they get their day in court. And yet a case like this is already wrapped up, it's done, and he's almost a free man. Now, you know, I mean, this is something. How do things like this happen?
Leon, when you read the Inspector of Prisons report of 2013 and 2014, you'll see that there are about 23,000 complaints of offenders who are crying to actually want to be released on parole or correctional supervision. And therefore, the case in point here is the Case Management Committee of the Pretoria Correctional Center did they actually consider other cases, similar cases? Are we not going to see other offenders who are serving 2761I, but who are not going to be released when once they've served they are 160? And I think that's the question that you should actually ask. And I can tell you, there are some of those offenders languishing in the correctional centers. Yeah. And that's what the case management centers, as well as the parole board and the head of centers, need to actually consider.
Yeah, indeed. Let's look at medical parole, because that's another massive issue. You look at the case of George Luca. George Luca dying in custody. He was trying to apply for medical parole. He didn't get that. Another individual, Xolile Mngeni, now this was in the Anni Dewani murder, also dying in custody. Clive Derby-Lewis, who was not so unlucky, managing to get out. I mean, how do we determine who gets medical parole and who doesn't?
During my time, medical parole, it's the doctors that are actually examining the offender, and then recommend to the parole board, and then after the parole board will recommend to the minister, depending on the type of sentence. And now there is a team that has been set up. There is an amendment now that is actually looking at that. So there are a lot of issues that are being involved, and I think a lot needs to be done to actually make sure even the Inspector General of prisons has actually mentioned that they need to actually ensure that there are systems put in place to ensure that everybody is able to actually benefit from the medical parole system, because there are very slow processes in terms of actually making sure that those cases are finalized.
You look at Shabir Sheikh. Shabir Sheikh is on medical parole, and yet now his parole conditions have been loosened. He can go back into work now. He can basically live as a free man. Or am I misunderstanding this? Are there still a lot of restrictions on him?
In terms of incarceration of offenders, what is critical is that we are we actually opted for the correctional approach. Therefore, that means that we have to incrementally make sure that we integrate an offender to the community. And it's within the bounds of correctional services to relax parole conditions and restrictions. That is allowed. So that at least you are able to, you start with the stricter conditions, the categories, up until they assess your condition, and then after that could be relaxed. So that is not only Shabir Sheikh, it should happen to each and every offender. So that is allowed. So I'm not privy to Shabir Sheikh's medical parole conditions, but that is normal. That could be relaxed as well.
Just on a final closing note, and I can imagine a lot of people sitting at home, and we've brought up all these names, and we've spoken about a lot of high-profile cases here, and I think a lot of people talk about this and the fact that does it matter who you are? And this is my question to you. Does it matter who you are and who you're standing in public as to how fast your case is heard, your parole conditions, and everything surrounding your law? Are some citizens more equal than others?
No, I would say the issues of class, gender, and inequalities are also important, and who is actually pushing your case. And for example, with the Oscar Pistorius case, I think the advocate Leroux was actually pushing, and therefore it's up to the people that are actually supposed to adjudicate on those issues, who should be able to actually treat those particular matters. The issue of standing in society, definitely we cannot rule that out, because if we go to prisons now, we'll find that there are people who are actually crown file who want their parole to be actually issued to them. So those are very, very critical issues, which I think as a country, the issues of inequalities, the issues of class, of gender, we need to actually confront and say all people are equal before the law, and we must treat people as equal before the law of South Africa. Those things we cannot rule them out, and people will find ways of actually pushing, using the legal the legal route to actually fight their own cases.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you very much for talking to us here about vital issues surrounding our justice system here in South Africa. Although now the chairperson of the Commission for Gender Equality, Mfanozelwe Shozi, used to be the chairperson of the parole board, so having some enlightened, I suppose, information when it comes to parole here in South Africa. Let's take a break. Please comment if you'd like to on anything that you've heard so far on the program. We'd love to hear from you at Morning Live SABC. We'll see you after.